Okay, good morning, people. Welcome to Wednesday, August 5th. It's a beautiful day here in Vancouver, of course, sunny and warm yet again. Earlier this morning, we were having some connection issues with in social justice, and so people's live stream kept getting disconnected. Some people were okay, some people weren't. I don't know why that was. I don't think it's anything that I'm doing. So if it happens to you, just try to deal with it as best you can. But there's just nothing. There's nothing I can do about it. So hopefully we'll be okay. But regardless, I'm just gonna keep. I'm gonna keep right on going, and hopefully everyone will be okay. All right. So who's here? Aliana's here. Good morning to you. Chifon's here. Good morning. Cindy's here. Morning, Cindy. Carmen's here. Good morning, Carmen. Jimmy's here. Hello, Jimmy. Jenna's here. Good morning, Jenna. Tika's here again. Hello, Tika. Ying is here. Good morning, Ying. And good morning to Min. Good evening to you, Ella. Karen's here. Hello again, Karen. Mashid is here again. Hello, Mashid. Hello, Pearly. Good morning. Adalbert's here. Good morning. And someone who I don't recognize, Lims. Is that Lim? Are you signed in under a different profile, Lim? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll try to wrap up this whole Roman thing. Yesterday we were talking about sort of the end of the Roman Republic and how things were starting to come apart. Oh no, that's Lim. Oh, you're here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know who that is. We were talking about how the whole thing starts to kind of come apart at the end, and so and as it does, we see that Julius Caesar is able to kind of come out on top, right? He's able to defeat his enemies politically and militarily, making himself kind of consul, one of the consuls for a number of years, and then sole consul, then dictator for life. And then he does this thing at the Lupercal where it looks like he's trying to crown himself king, but we're not really sure what it is. And so a number of senators get a little bit nervous about that, and they assassinate him, right? And so he's dead, and then there's a power vacuum. Something has to happen, right? So let's talk about what happens. So again, we're right at the end of the Roman Republic here. Way back in the day, in the early Republic, the Romans kicked out their Etruscan kings, and the power of the kings passed to two consuls elected yearly, right? But of course, all of those rules and the cursus honorum and, sort of the values of public service and honor, those have all gone out the window by the late Republic. And it's basically just powerful, rich men with armies behind them fighting for ever greater power and money and glory at the expense of basically everyone else. So all of Rome's traditional values have been stomped on and spit on by these power-hungry guys who are, again, basically just using the Republic for their own ends. We see Lucius Cornelius Sulla, right, a consul and Roman general who actually marches his army on Rome, right? He sort of threatens the Senate into getting a military command. He goes off and makes himself rich. He comes back and installs himself as a dictator and kills all of his enemies. Pompey does something similar. He's a victorious general who manages to extort the consulship, even though he's way too young and hasn't held any political office. He still manages to get that very prestigious office in Rome. And again, while all of these guys are fighting it out and getting rich and powerful, a huge number of Romans are actually quite poor, and they're basically on welfare. They're basically getting grain from the government in order to survive. And so politics in the late Republic is very populist, right? So lots of these people trying to gain political power just tell the people whatever they think they want to hear in order to get them to support them. And meanwhile, powerful military generals fight civil wars at the expense of everybody in order to gain more power. And of course, into this whole mess walks Julius Caesar, right? A former lawyer. He kind of gains a few public offices. He's a magistrate of some sort early in his career. He becomes Pontifex Maximus at some point. And he enters into a bit of a backroom deal with these two other guys, Pompey and Crassus, right? And so these guys are all wealthy, powerful Romans, and their plan is to help each other out to get the things that they want, right? And so Crassus and Pompey and Caesar all kind of scratch each other's back in order to get their back scratched, if you will. So this one of the things that comes out of this triumvirate is the fact that Caesar is able to become governor of 3 provinces in Gaul. And so he goes up there, as you can see, in 58 BC. He wages war against the Gauls for 10 years. He gains lots of loyalty from his troops. He gains lots of glory, and he gains lots of money up there as well. But after he's finished being victorious up there, he has to come home. And so, as you can see here in 50 BC, the Senate, led by Pompey, orders Caesar to come back to Rome. And of course, that's a problem for Caesar because the triumvirate is no more, right? Crassus has been killed in battle a few years earlier. Pompey, who was married to Caesar's daughter Julia, Julia died in childbirth. So there's nothing connecting these two guys anymore, and they basically become enemies. And so Caesar has a bit of a problem, right? If he comes back just as a regular guy. He doesn't come back as a general or a consul or really anybody. He owes a lot of people a lot of money, and so he might get hauled off to court for that. Or he's got a pretty strong enemy in Pompey, and Pompey just might have him assassinated in the street. And so it's kind of a dangerous thing for Caesar to come back to Rome with no official position. So what's he going to do? Well, he collects his army, and just like Sulla years before, he marches on Rome, right? He gets engaged in a civil war with Pompey and his supporters. They fight it out over a number of years and a number of battles until finally Pompey flees to Egypt, and Pompey is betrayed by Ptolemy the 13th, right? And so Caesar arrives in Egypt, and Ptolemy the 13th hands Caesar the head of Pompey. And so the civil war is over. Caesar has emerged victorious, right? And so as he's really the most powerful man in Rome at this point, he begins to rule Rome and makes a number of social and political reforms. And as near as we can tell, his reforms are actually pretty good. He's actually doing a reasonable job of running Rome. Of course, he's the sole power, right? And he's kind of breaking a lot of rules in the process, but he seems to have been a fairly good administrator, a fairly good head of government. However, he is, like we mentioned, he's elected dictator in perpetuity. And so some parts of the Senate, some members of the Senate worry that he is about to try to make himself a king. And so they hatch a plan, and on the 15th of March in 44 BC, they stab him to death. right in the Senate hall. Caesar's body is cremated. The people are frightened, right? Because after the murder of Caesar, the senators come out of the Senate hall and they say, we have restored the republic, is what they say. And again, that's bananas. They haven't restored anything. They've just killed a guy. But there are decades of spitting on the rules and just completely overriding the rules that people have been doing for decades. And so killing one guy doesn't fix all of that. And so these senators claim that they have restored the republic is just completely ridiculous. And so again, once the people hear that, they basically run to their homes and bolt their doors, because they know another civil war will follow, right? As somebody has to take the place of Caesar. Somebody has to fill that power vacuum, that power void. And so I guess that brings us to our questions, right? So the first question I asked you was this one here. Who is this guy Octavian? This guy Octavian comes basically out of nowhere. There's this whole story going on with Crassus and Pompey and Caesar. And then totally from the side comes this Octavian kid. And who's he? So Aliana says he is Caesar's heir. Okay, so Caesar has named Octavian in his will, right? So Caesar wrote a will, leaving things behind after his death, and he's also Caesar's grand nephew. So kind of a distant relative of Caesar, right? It's not his son, it's not his grandson, it's not his nephew, it's his grandnephew. So there's a bit of separation between Caesar and this kid. But again, Caesar writes Octavian into his will when the kid is probably about 14 or 15 years old. So Caesar obviously sees something in this kid, and Octavian winds up in a second triumvirate, because the first one worked so well, a second triumvirate with Marcus Antonius, or Mark Antony as we often know him, and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. So it's Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. So this kid Octavian, even though he's about 19 when Caesar dies, he's a smart cookie. And so immediately when Caesar dies, Octavian shows up and says, I am the rightful heir of Julius Caesar. He takes on Caesar's name, so he refers to himself as Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. So he sticks Julius Caesar's name in order to give himself extra prestige. He goes to Caesar's army and says, hey guys, I'm the heir, I'm Caesar's heir, and if you follow me, I'll give you all the stuff that Caesar promised you. So immediately, Octavian has Caesar's name, and he has Caesar's army behind him, just like that. And so again, he gets involved in this. Triumvirate with Mark Antony, who's a friend of Caesar, and Lepidus, who's another. I don't know if he's a friend or associate of Caesar. I don't know too much about Lepidus. So they go ahead, this triumvirate, these guys team up, and again they go into a civil war with the guys from the Senate, the guys who opposed Caesar and murdered him. And so there's this kind of revenge thing happening with the second triumvirate fighting with those optimates from the Senate. And so that war goes on for quite some time. The optimates, or the Senate members who killed Caesar are defeated, right? And we heard in the video yesterday that Brutus killed himself, right? And so in the process of that civil war, he knew he was going to lose, and so he killed himself. And then the triumvirate itself ends, right? So after this triumvirate defeats those senators, those murderers of Caesar, then there's three guys in power, and then they start fighting with each other, right? So yeah, the triumvirs, so Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus, they defeat Caesar's assassins at Philippi, right, in 42 BC. Then what happens? So Pearlie says, yeah, another civil war results between Antonius and Octavian. Yeah, so Lepidus gets pushed aside, and then Antony and Octavian are fighting it out, right? Antony flees to Egypt, kind of like Pompey did, but Antony kind of cozies up with Cleopatra, right? Cleopatra is the queen of Egypt at the time. He kind of hooks up with her. Octavian pursues Mark Antony to Egypt, and when it looks like Octavian's going to win, both Cleopatra and Antony commit suicide, right? So there's this very classic story of I think both of them letting themselves be bitten by venomous snakes, right? That's the story. And so Antony and Cleopatra kill themselves when Octavian is going to be victorious. So again, he is victorious, and so Octavian then goes back to Rome. The Optimates or Caesar's assassins have been defeated and killed. Lepidus has been kicked out of the picture. Antony is dead. And Octavian returns to Rome triumphant. And so now what does he do? Well, yes, sort of. This is where it gets complicated. This is where it gets a little complicated. This is where it gets complicated. What does he do when he gets back to Rome? Sort of, but not quite. Sort of, but not quite. He does something very clever, this Octavian. Very, very clever. What does he do? Okay. So Cindy says he's going to be named Augustus. Yes. So the Senate is going to give him this title. Excuse me. They're going to give him this title of Augustus, right? So they're going to say Augustus, I believe, is divinely favored, I think is what it means. And so they're going to give him a new kind of name. And he's going to use it going forward. Yeah, so he's going to get rid of... So he started out as Gaius Octavius, and then he was Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, right? And now he's going to be known as Augustus. Same guy, but he changes his name quite a bit, just like P. Diddy, if you know who he is. So changes his name a lot, but here's what he does that's so interesting. So he goes back to Rome, and what's he going to do? He's in exactly the same predicament. He has exactly the same problem as Caesar has. He's the main power in Rome, but how is he going to rule, right? Is he going to try and hold consulships? Well, that's difficult. Is he going to make himself dictator? Well, he can try that, I guess, but that didn't work very well for Caesar. He definitely can't make himself a king because the Romans won't accept that. We know that. So what is he going to do, right? So Octavian goes back to the Senate and he says, he says, I have restored the Republic, right? So now it's your job to keep it that way. He says that to the Senate. So he kind of makes this show of giving up power, right? Now, it's not clear about how genuine that statement was. It's not clear if he was being honest or if he was not being honest. But what seems to have happened is that he said, I have restored the Republic, and now, senators, it's up to you to keep it that way. And the senators say, oh no, Octavian, don't leave us here. We're going to give you all of these honors. And so what happens is that, of course, Octavian gets a new name, right? They refer to him as Augustus. But what he also does is he collects, well, actually, this is the answer to this next question. How does he manage to rule Rome? Yeah, here it is. So Cindy says this. He brilliantly created for himself new titles and powers, though grounded in previous Roman tradition. Yeah, so he's called Augustus, and he refers to himself as princeps. So that's good. Yeah, he refers to himself as princeps, and princeps is kind of an old title in the Senate, and it's kind of like the first man. So the most respected member of the Senate was called princeps, and it's not really an official title. It's just kind of, the oldest, most experienced guy, the guy with the most authority. You refer to him as princeps. He's the first man. And so he kind of takes on the title of princeps of all of Rome. But again, it's not a political office. It's not a position. It's an honorary title, right? It's an honorary title that he gets. But he also, he doesn't have an official position. So there's no such thing. There's no such thing as emperor. So some people might want to refer to Augustus, as the first emperor of Rome, but in reality, there's no such thing as emperor. Emperor doesn't exist. So here he is, this clever dude, Gaius Octavius, but once he becomes Augustus, he kind of portrays himself like this, right? So this is Augustus, the princeps, the first man of Rome, victorious general, benefactor of the people. This is him. I'm just going to jump ahead because I've said some of these things before. Yeah, so this is the genius of Octavius, or Augustus, whatever you want to call him here. He can't crown himself king because nobody will accept it. But he can't really remain a general either. He can't remain a dictator because he'll constantly be fighting civil wars with other generals, just like people have been doing for decades, right? So here, this is somewhat humorous, but this is what he does. And for those of you who might want to be an emperor in the future, maybe take note of this, because this is how you can become all-powerful in 7 easy steps. So Octavius does this. He gains a loyal army, right? So he takes Caesar's army and gains their loyalty. He goes to war and kills all of his rivals, right? First the assassins of Caesar. Then he gets rid of Lepidus. Then he gets rid of Mark Antony. He tries to give up his power, but fails, right? So he goes back to the Senate and says, I've restored the Republic. It's up to you to keep it. And of course they say, no, Augustus, stay and help us, right? So he tries, quote unquote, to give up his power, but he's not able to. He gains public favor. So he positions himself as kind of like, instead of the father of the family, that he's the father of the nation, right? And we've seen other leaders do this, right? We saw Ashoka in India try to do the same thing, position himself as the father of the nation. He acquires a number of special powers, okay? So he has the powers of tribune. Even though he's not a tribune, tribunes still exist, but he has the powers of one, even though he's not a tribune. He has the powers of a censor, even though he isn't a censor. He manages to get control of the treasury. So he has all of these kind of special powers that no one person has ever had in Roman history. But he holds no official office. He doesn't hold an official position in the government. And so, presto, Augustus has managed to take control of Rome without it appearing like he is. He's not a king, he's not an emperor, he's not a consul, he's not a senator, he is princeps. But again, he holds all of these special powers that no one has ever held before, and they allow him to gain control of the Republic in a way that no one has ever been able to do so before. So, sorry, I'm just going to jump ahead. So here, you'll remember this graphic from before. Here is the Republic, and the Republic still continues to function, right? So there's still an assembly, even when Augustus is there. There's still an assembly. People get elected to the assembly, patricians and plebeians. They pass legislation and debate and vote and things. There are still magistrates who are elected. There are still tribunes. There are still consuls. Augustus is consul sometimes, but not all the time. And there's still a Senate that exists as well. And so all of these aspects of the Republic continue to operate under Augustus. But Augustus has enough power to kind of push things to happen one way or the other. So again, he's kind of off to the side. He has no official title. Well, he has no official office, but he does have the power of tribune, right? He can introduce laws and legislations, and he can veto them. He can veto is I forbid, right? He can stop laws from being passed. He controls the treasury. So if you want to spend money on anything in Rome, you have to go through Augustus. Sometimes he's consul, so he's able to use the powers of consul when he needs them. He's still the head of the military, and he is seen as the sort of model citizen of Rome, the princeps, even though, again, he has no office. Clever, right? And so he rules like this for quite some time, and successfully. As it mentioned in the textbook, there's a lot of building projects that Augustus completes. This is in the Forum. Augustus builds a large temple to Mars, I believe, in the Augustan Forum, and so Augustus builds this, and many other things as well. And again, he starts a very long line of what will eventually come to be called Roman emperors. And so even though Augustus is not an emperor, eventually people will start referring to these guys as emperors. And so you can see there's actually quite a long line from Augustus here in 27 BCE all the way to the last Roman emperor here, Romulus Augustus, in 476 BC. So this is about a 500-year period of Roman emperors. To make a long story short, if you study the history of these emperors, you will see that. Sorry, just one second. You will see that you kind of run into the same problem as you run into when you have any single leader. So whether you have a dictator or a king or an emperor or a shah or whoever you have, when you have a single leader in power, you always have the same issue. If it's a good person, then things go well. If it's a bad person, things don't go very well. And it's the same thing with Roman emperors. And so Augustus seems to be a clever and talented ruler. And so under Augustus, Rome goes into a bit of a golden age, right? And so there's lots of building that happens. Rome is relatively at peace, right? And so if you read ahead a little bit, you'll see this period's referred to as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And so it's a peaceful period. It's a time when literature and arts flourish. And so, again, Augustus turns out to be, even though as a kid, Octavian came out of absolutely nowhere to take power, turns out he's a pretty good administrator. And so things kind of settle down. But as you go through other Roman emperors for the next 500 years, things are kind of up and down, right? You have some very talented, intelligent, good rulers, good emperors, and then you have some emperors who are just complete tyrants and, insane sex criminals. And so, there's a big swing between how these emperors turn out. And again, that's always the danger of having a single ruler. If the ruler's good, things go well. If the ruler's not good, things don't go so well. I'll ask you this question here because I did ask you. The most prominent poets of Augustan Rome, who were they? Who were they? Okay, so Perley says, three most prominent poets of the Augustan age. We have Virgil, we have Horace, and we have Ovid, right? So Ovid, of course, wrote Lots of poetry, and I think lots of sexy poetry too. And I think it was a little too sexy for Augustus. Augustus was trying to restore an age of sort of values and proper behavior, and Ovid was a little too racy for him, I believe, and so Ovid got kicked out of Rome. There's Horace, of course, and then there's Virgil. And Virgil writes one story that we've already heard of, the myth of Aeneas, or the Aeneid. And so at this time in history, the Romans are trying to kind of rewrite their history a little bit. And so remember the original origin story of Rome, where Remus kills Romulus. So Rome is founded with one brother murdering another one. Ugh, dark, right? So Virgil kind of creates this new origin story for Rome that connects back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, so those Greek works of literature. And so in the sort of retelling, or in the telling of this story of Aeneas, Aeneas is a soldier from the Trojan War coming home, and he comes home, he spends some time in Carthage, he falls in love with the queen of Carthage, Dido, but then he knows he has to return home to Italy to found Rome, right? That's what the gods have decreed for him. And so he leaves Dido and goes on to found Rome. So it's a much more heroic origin story than the Remus and Romulus story. And so Virgil has a role in trying to sort of reimagine Rome's history in a way that's kind of more in line with what Augustus is trying to create, a peaceful, sort of a peaceful, values-oriented society, rather than, the bloodshed and war that has been taking place for decades at this point. Okay. So one more thing for you. In Microsoft Teams, I've posted a link to a video, okay? And so it's just a short video that talks about Augustus and how we can and how we should see him as a historical figure. I've kind of portrayed him one way, but maybe that's not the way we should see him. And so what I'll ask you to do, the video is just 5 minutes long. And so what I'll ask you to do is go and watch the video. I've got one question for you to answer. That's it. Watch the video and then come back here and we'll talk very quickly about it. And then we'll probably finish a bit early today, just because we're kind of at a natural end point of this Roman Republic story. So go watch the video. It's just 5 minutes long. Come back here in 7 minutes. We'll talk about the video, and then we'll probably wrap it up for today, okay? So I'll see you very shortly. Go watch the video, Microsoft Teams. Okay, so short, cute little video there with some animation, but again, it asks us a very important historical question, right? And it has a lot to do with what did Augustus think he was doing, right? Did he want to take sole power? Did he want to become a dictator and an emperor, but he just couldn't do it, and so he found a sneaky way to be the sole power in Rome? Or did he actually restore the Republic, but did he do it in such a way that he knew that it needed to be balanced out, and so he was the balance, right? He was the one that kind of kept everything working the way it should be, intervening where he needed to intervene, and staying out of things when he could stay out of them. What was his intention? What was he trying to do? Was he trying to restore the Republic as best he could, even though it was rather broken at the time? Or was he trying to seize power in a very sneaky sort of way? So Karen says he's a visionary less who guaranteed his citizens' place in history. Definitely did, right? Rome, of course, went on to heavily inspire the Western world, both in the French Republic, the US, and other countries as well. So Rome is part of the cultural heritage of the West. So Karen thinks he's a bit of both. Cindy says he's a bit of both. Visionary leader. Okay, sorry. Got it, Karen. Yeah, it's tough to know, right? It's tough to know what he was. We know what he did, right? And we know what the effect of those actions were. But again, it's not entirely clear what he thought he was doing, right? We said that when he came back from defeating Mark Antony, he went to the Senate and said, I have restored the Republic, and now it's your job to kind of keep it. Was that a genuine statement? Was he really trying to give up power? Or did the Senate know that he wasn't trying to do that at all? And so, again, was that whole exchange a piece of political theater? Or did he actually mean it? And again, did he rule in a way that was, trying to keep the balance of the Republic and keep it going? Or was he really an emperor, but one from behind the scenes who was pulling the strings like a puppet master? Tough to know. Okay, so that's where we'll leave it for today. Come back tomorrow, and we'll try to start tying up this whole course in some sort of to get some sort of resolution on what we've done, okay? So that's it for today. I hope you have a nice rest of the afternoon. Don't forget to work on your final papers that are due on Monday, August the 10th, which is 5 days away. If you have any questions, you can ask me, of course, but I think I will end it there, and I will see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? So have a nice afternoon. See you.